Unspoken Issues.
Well, here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Unspoken Issues podcast. That's right. We've returned. We're going to be talking some 90s comics, believe it or not, like we always do right here on this show. And joining me this evening, one, Chris Armstrong. Chris Armstrong, you ready to talk some 90s comics?
Cowabunga. Let's do it.
Perfect. And then over there is Evan Bevins. Evan Bevins, are you ready to talk some 90s comics tonight?
Jesse, all I can say is go ninja, go.
We've got to establish where everybody is when it comes to their fandom of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And I'll go ahead and start. I can remember as a kid, I'm sure it was 87 when the first episodes released. I began watching the show. Gosh, I want to say it was after school. They were running shows after school in the afternoons on Fox. Now, were they primarily a Saturday cartoon in your guys' neck of the woods? Coach Evan, your neck of the woods is my neck of the woods. I can't remember.
It wasn't then.
Okay.
I was a few hours
Bluefield.
south.
That's right. You were down south. Well, okay.
But I remember my grandparents lived up here, and we didn't get Ninja Turtles down in the southern part of West Virginia, but my grandparents got it because they watched it all the time. Not really. But I remember it was like a 3.5, 4 hour drive. And I remember coming up here and I was telling my mom, like, we got to get there by whatever time it came on because I can watch Ninja Turtles. Otherwise, I had to like keep renting it from the video store. Kids, that's like a red box you could walk around in.
I know that they did do afternoons at one eventually. I don't know how it started because my first exposure to it, I'm almost sure, was, like Evan said, videotapes. The videotapes, I think a friend of mine maybe had one, or maybe we rented one, and I just fell in love with it. And then eventually, I remember watching it on CBS on Saturday mornings.
Yes, I don't remember when it expanded there.
Yeah, I don't remember as far what the actual rollout was as far as the show on network TV or on syndicated, what all that stuff, how that all worked. Because I was 7 and it came out.
Right.
Maybe I was 8 by the time I actually saw it.
He wasn't reading the trades or regularly perusing the Hollywood Reporter to keep up on the industry.
I remember I had the initial videotape that I guess was a 3-parter, and then the Hot Rodding Teenagers was the second videotape I think that came out. And they put quite a few out with 2, 3, 4 episodes on each tape for a while.
You just watched, didn't you just recently watch Turtle Power? The documentary?
Documentary, which actually, I guess, came out probably to coincide with the live-action movie that came out in 2013 or 14, the Michael Bay produced one.
Yeah.
But I'd never watched it, but I watched it a couple weeks ago.
What'd you think?
I thought it was cool. I knew a lot of that stuff, but there was stuff in there that I wasn't really aware of. I think a lot of the stuff that that had come out 10 years ago or so, but in the meantime, that Toys That Made Us Netflix series came out.
Oh, yeah.
And they had a really cool episode on the Ninja Turtles, and there was a lot of the backstory between Eastman and Laird in there as well. But yeah, a very entertaining documentary. I liked it a lot, especially like anybody that's a Turtles fan should check it out. It's cool. Yeah. It's on Paramount, I think.
Yeah, really solid documentary. A lot of good stuff. My favorite part, I think, in there was the development and learning about some of the toys that they were creating. Mm-hmm. That was really cool, and how it just kind of started just getting crazy and out of control.
Right.
With some of the crazy designs that they had.
Yeah, there were some designs that never made it to production in there that were really neat. That was
right.
One of those things.
I learned a lot about it from the cartoons and the toys. I even, before I knew the term fan fiction, had typed out several chapters of my own original copyright infringing Turtles epic that squeezed in every action figure I had.
Is this something that you still have? Because I know you were doing the
Sadly,
Free Willy covers.
I do not.
Dang it. All right, well.
Yeah, the action figures, that was the real boom. I love the cartoon as well. I read the Archie comics. I didn't really read any of the Mirage stuff until I got a little older, and still haven't read much of it. But the action figures, I was crazy with those. And up through the later waves, probably into the early 90s, I was still getting those figures. I wish I had some of them still.
Yeah, I ended up with a lot of probably the first wave. And then I think I have a couple of the second wave. And it was one of those things where I was like, I either got to go G.I. Joe or I got to go Turtles here. And I ended up sticking with the G.I. Joes. But I still have all my Turtles that I originally had. I think it was probably, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, maybe even a little bit longer than that. I ran into a massive like cache of them at a auction and got them for dirt cheap. Like original, they're all loose figures, but Rocksteady, Bebop. Well, I think it's just Rocksteady. Oh, Leatherhead. Is that his name? Leatherhead. Had a bunch of Foot Soldier was in there. All sorts of. One of these days, I think I have the stuff on Facebook. I'll have to tag you guys in it so you guys could go take a look at it. But yeah, the figures for sure. The figures were something that I was definitely into. I hopped over to the wiki here. The first season only had 5 episodes, which was aired between December 14th to December 18th of 1987. And it just says, as far as network goes, it just says syndication. My guess is whoever wanted to pick it up. Is that what that means? Like whoever wanted to show it? Then the next season was 13 episodes, went from October 1st of 88 to December 24th of 88. And then the third season, I'll just stop there because it goes all the way to season 10. But season 3 went from September 25th of 89 to December 15th of 89. There were a total of 47 episodes in season 3. So they knew this trend was catching on.
I was going to say, I think a lot of that is covered in the documentary too. I don't remember all the details, but I think they talk a lot about how that show really exploded.
Oh yeah, didn't they have the voice cast, like some of the voice cast together? This was right before James Avery passed away too. Like I feel like I watched it right before he passed away. To talk about the comics real quick, I was not picking up the black and white comics. I either started picking up Wizard Magazine or I picked up something. Maybe it was Comic Buyer's Guide. I can't remember. But I remember starting to learn that, oh my goodness, they're based off of a comic book that came out a long time ago. Well, say a long time ago. It came out in 85, 2 years before the TV show, the animated series hit. But
2 years is an eternity to a 10-year-old, though.
That's the truth. That's the truth. But I started learning about this comic book and how it was a little bit different from the Fun Time Cowabunga series that we got in the cartoons. I will say that I picked up one Mirage issue. You ever heard of Hills down there, Chris?
No.
Okay. All right. There was a.
We do have an Ollie's now. We got
Oh, you do? Oh, good.
Yeah, we got an Ollie's last December, I think. But yeah, don't know what Hills is, I guess.
Okay. All right. Hills was a department store. They used to I'm sure it's probably Pennsylvania, Ohio. Hills is where the toys are. That was one thing you always heard. But Hills, for some reason, had just loose issues of comics with the freaking, like, the little sticker price tag that they would just kind of like. I picked up a Mirage issue. I can't remember. It's like issue 18, maybe even further than that, of it was a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mirage black and white issue just sitting there on the shelf. I picked it up, took it up front and bought it. But that's the only black and white issue that I ever owned that I picked up in the wild. That's probably the best way to put it. Evan, do you have any experience with the black and white comics at all?
Not at first. I did get one non-Archie comic when I was a kid. Maybe it was at Hills. It was up in this area somewhere, and it was just laying there, but it was in color, and they were time traveling and fighting cavemen. Very strange. Very, very dark. Not super dark, but compared to the cartoon and everything, the thing that I remember is watching the movie. And I learned a little about the comics because a friend of mine got a book, the unauthorized Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle quiz book, and I immediately had to get it too. I learned a little about some of the comic stuff, but I remember watching the original movie and thinking, what the heck, this is so different from what it actually is. And then years later, I finally read the original first issue. I can't remember if it was from a collection at the library. They had a huge hardback collection at the library, or they did a reprint for Free Comic Book Day. I actually wrote about it on my blog, and I realized, no, the movie was very faithful to the original comic. It kind of mixed the comic and the cartoon, but there was a lot of stuff in there that I was like, why did they change all that stuff? And it's like, no, they were following the source material, so to speak.
Hey, there you go. Well,
but yeah, I did get that one issue that was just very bizarre, kind of like the one we're going to talk about tonight. and then but a lot of what I read were the Archie issues.
Okay, all right, yeah, they had a really prominent run in Archie, because I remember going to the mall, and Walden Books, I think, was in the mall at that time. And they always had the Archie. I remember always seeing the Archie TMNT on the spinner rack.
Yeah, I got into the Archie series which was initially, I think, the first handful of issues were based directly on the first few episodes, and then it kind of
the first 4 issues were adaptations of episodes, and then I think maybe it was the first 4 or 5, and I think by 5 or 6 they started doing original stories.
Yeah, and I was all over those. I really enjoyed those. And eventually I learned that there was Eastman and Laird's Ninja Turtles they had their own comics from the 80s. And I didn't have any of those, but I do remember a cousin of mine, older cousin, he ran a sports card shop, and they also started doing comics in the 90s. And ironically,
immediately became your favorite cousin. Go ahead.
Oh, yes. He also gifted me an issue of Darkhawk #1 that I'd missed when it came out after there had been several issues, and he knew I didn't have the first one, and he showed up at my school one day with one.
Wow.
But he also gifted me, coincidentally enough, that time travel issue that Evan was talking about.
Oh, wow.
Which I went back and rebought that issue out of a dollar bin probably 10 or 12 years ago, and didn't realize who the artist was at the time, of course, but it was Richard Corbin.
Oh, yeah.
Is pretty kind of an iconic artist. He does a lot of horror stuff, and he has a really cool comic style or art style. And yeah, like Evan said, that was a much darker and kind of more mature than, especially from the cartoony Archie Ninja Turtle stuff. And I've got a collection of the first 10 issues that IDW put out, these collections of the old reprinting all the old Eastman and Laird stuff a while back, I guess once they got the license to the Turtles. And I have that first volume. I haven't read it, but I have thumbed through it and did see how similar it is to the Ninja Turtles movie.
It's interesting because all three of us grew up with the Turtles. There was a time where something that you really loved as a kid kind of falls off. It's no longer got the popularity behind it that it did. Turtles, their popularity waned a little bit, but there was always something out there that kept them there.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
The only time they have not been fairly popular, it seems like, is the late 90s. Once the sheen of the live action movies and the cartoon kind of fell off, they did that live action show that was Power Rangers style, the next mutation, I think, and then it kind of fell off. But then in the early 2000s, they had a new animated series that was pretty popular, and then every 5 or 10 years, it would get kind of reinvented. They did the CGI animated series in I think the late aughts or early 2010s. Then the movies came out, and then recently they had the new CGI movies. It's one of those properties that keeps kind of bubbling back up. It'll kind of be dormant for a couple years, and then all of a sudden there's a new big Ninja Turtles thing.
Right. I think the weakest I would say that they have been popularity wise is probably TMNT 3, when the live action that the third movie, of course, it's not the greatest, but
by that time the animated series is probably into it. It's probably into its 8th or 9th season. It's about to be wrapping up.
Yeah, Evan Bevins, what do you have to say about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3?
I enjoyed it.
I didn't.
I don't know why we couldn't have had more mutants and stuff. I guess maybe it was too expensive, but it was fine.
I went to the theaters and watched the first one and the second one, and there was probably there had to have been a few years between the second and the third, because I didn't watch the third one until I was in college, and that was on videotape. I didn't actually go to the theaters and watch it. I was just talking to somebody about this. I can't remember if this made a podcast or even if it's aired yet or not, but Casey Jones, okay, as far as Turtles go, which, by the way, before we get into the main topic, we all have to tell who our favorite turtle is, because everybody's got a favorite turtle. But Casey Jones was my favorite member of this family, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
And Casey Jones in the third movie does nothing but babysit. And it's the stupidest, it is the worst use of a character, in my opinion, just to try and get laughs.
But his ancestor played a major role.
Okay, you got.
Was it played by this? Was it Elias Codius playing that character? I don't remember.
Yes, yes, it was.
All right. Well,
I mean, spoiler alert: Casey Jones is my favorite turtle.
Okay. All right then. Spoiler taken.
Concerning the live action movies, the first time I remember hearing about the Ninja Turtles movie was on the back of probably a Turtles comic, or maybe it was another comic. It was on the back of a comic book. There was an ad, and I was in a Walmart. This was a comic my parents were going to buy for me, and I saw the ad with the masked, the puppet turtle heads poking out the bottom. And I immediately thought, is it going to be like real life, like not a cartoon? And I was asking my mom, and she was like, I don't know. she had no idea what I was talking about. But yeah, that movie came out when I was, I guess, 10 years old. It came out in 90. And that was a movie, the first time I can remember me and a bunch of my friends all getting together and going to a movie theater together and watching that, and life-changing experience.
Oh, man.
And I liked the second one as well. And by the time the third one came out, I was a little older. I was probably like 13, and I didn't see it in theaters. I remember one of my cousins rented it when I was over at my aunt's house, and I thought, man, this movie's not any good.
It's rough.
And years later, I bought this DVD collection that had the 3 live action movies and the CGI movie from like 2007, I think.
Yeah, you're right.
Which I think was supposed to be in the same continuity.
It was, because when Splinter puts the one trophy up there, there's items from all 3 of the live action movies on the shelf.
Okay.
Nice.
All right.
But yeah, I rewatched the first 2, and still, even to this day, the first one is awesome.
Oh my
Yeah.
god!
The second one is a little, it leans more towards the kiddie side, but it's still fun and entertaining. The third one, I couldn't even finish it when I went to watch it. When I got that DVD set, watched about 30 minutes of it, and then skipped to the CGI movie. Not to say that Evan shouldn't like it. Teach their own. I just
You're not going to convince me not to like. Oh, it's been a while since I watched it. My kids loved the first one. The oldest lost interest in the second one, and the youngest really liked it. And then she tried watching the third one a couple times, and this is not an indictment of the quality, but she did fall asleep each time. But like 5 minutes in, it wasn't. I haven't watched the third one all the way through. It's definitely the weakest of the 3. I think we can all agree on that. But also, I'd like to give credit. Sometimes when you change a cast member, it can really take you out of the movie. But young Evan had equal amount an equal crush on Judith Hoag and Paige Turco.
Okay.
One of the rare times where it didn't affect the quality of the movie. They were both good. And I still get excited when I see Judith Hoag for those 30 seconds in Armageddon.
Yeah.
It's another reason to love Armageddon.
Mm-hmm. What did you guys think about the 2007 CGI movie?
That was one I went to go see in the theater. I didn't hate it. I felt detached from a little bit from it, just because I was like, I don't know. Here's what I wanted. What I wanted is what we just got with Mutant Mayhem. Yes. I wanted that in 2007. I didn't understand why we did not just go all in on all the characters that everybody knows, and it's animated. You can do this now. You don't have to worry about putting a suit on to act like you can do anything you want in an animated movie. And it took them till 2020, what did it come out? 2023, 2024, 2023, right? It took them that long to figure out, like, we can do this. But then again, they've got the animated series, and they can do whatever they want there. Maybe that's why. But I liked it. I went to the theaters, watched it. I enjoyed what I was watching, but again, it didn't leave a lasting impression on me, because I felt like there was so much more we could have done to bring people back into the theaters to watch the Turtles. Evan?
Yeah, same with me. I enjoyed it, but I thought there was a missed opportunity. I don't know if they were thinking, hey, this is the first in a series. I don't know. I wasn't really sure what they were going for. I liked it better than the Michael Bay ones, and that pains me a little bit, because every time anybody says something critical about Michael Bay, I feel the need to defend Armageddon and The Rock. Even if they're not talking about Armageddon and The Rock, even if it's a movie I don't like, I'm just like, yeah, but he did The Rock.
And Bad Boys too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I haven't watched those.
I was going to say, like, as far as the Michael Bay movies, I didn't hate those either. There was a lot of hate right out the gate for those, just because it was Michael Bay and of course the whole alien background. And I think there's a lot of people that just discounted it right off because of what everybody thought he was going to do with the property. And I think his intentions were actually there, if I remember correctly, to do that. But then he finally, of all people, he thought, oh, okay, well, maybe I shouldn't do that to this beloved property. These guys are actually mutant turtles. That was the rumor, I remember. But anyway, as far as like the live action TMNTs that we got recently, I didn't find myself hating either one of them. I thought they were okay, in my opinion. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I felt kind of the same way you were talking about the CGI one. It's like I enjoyed them for the most part, but there was like a detachment. Like, this isn't really the same Ninja Turtles that I have always really loved. Part of it is like the designs. I don't think are great. They're too big.
Designs are kind of rough. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
but I rewatched the first one 6 months ago, maybe. That I hadn't seen since in theaters, and it was okay. They're entertaining. I remember when they were in theaters, I liked the second one more than I liked the first one. So
Yeah. Well, we got
Because it had Casey Jones.
Casey
that
Jones,
could have been it. And
don't know,
Bebop
I mean,
and Rocksteady.
Bebop
I
and
didn't
Rocksteady.
Yeah, I didn't dislike them. I don't remember a lot about them. I watched them both. I didn't dislike them, but I didn't have a desire to revisit it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Krang was in the
I did
second
like
one too, right?
I think so. Yeah. Again, I
Okay.
don't remember a lot about that one really either, like Evan said, but I did like the 2007 one a lot. Mostly the rooftop fight between Leo and Wrath. That was really cool.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
But it also not as good as, doesn't have the same effect as like the first two live action movies, but I
It
like
does. I mean, what kid did not lose their mind when Raphael yelled "damn" in that first movie? That was the great, and he doesn't just say it once either. I think he says it like 2 or 3 times.
I remember being shocked. It was a PG movie based on a cartoon. To my mind, it was really more based on.
I'm right there with you.
A comic, but yeah, we were all shocked, and it was fairly violent for a kids movie. That's probably I think that's one of the reasons the second movie went more lighthearted, is maybe there were complaints about how dark the first one was.
I couldn't like recite the entire movie for you now, but if I put it on, I can pretty much speak the dialogue like right as it. There's still I can still tell you what address Michelangelo had the pizza delivered to. 122 and an 8.
Well, that was one of the first VHSs that we had. Batman. That was one of maybe the first really big, like, hey, you can own this 8 months after it was in theaters at home. And then we got Batman when it came out, and then when Turtles came out, we got that on VHS, and I wore that tape out.
Yeah, man. Evan talked about the dialogue and quoting that thing. There's so many quotes in that first movie. I have used "go play" so many times where Tatsu is sitting there and like one of the kids it runs into him and he's like, "Go play."
Do you do the hand motion?
You have no idea how many times I've done that to my kids. Like we go to the playground and I'm like, "Go play."
I don't know if they address it in that documentary or where I saw this, but my understanding is that scene in the first movie where he like beats up that kid in the locker room, that he kills that kid.
Oh, seriously?
And then they had to go back and kind of edit around it to make it look like he was still alive after he beat him.
Oh, wow. I didn't remember that.
Because that was like a step too far. Like maybe they were going to have to get a PG-13 rating or something if they did that or something. I don't know. I can't remember where I had seen that.
And that down there, family.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Sam Rockwell is in the first one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yep.
Tips the cops off the old warehouse over on Lairdman Island.
Golly. Well, we can sit here and talk the first movie, but we've got to go into 96 right now. We talked about the comics themselves, Mirage, Archie. Mirage stopped at some point, right? Like, is that what happened?
Yeah, they were going, I think, concurrently with the Archie stuff for a while, but I think eventually they stopped producing. And my understanding is the Image series was supposed to be a continuation of that continuity. And then later, Peter Laird started Mirage back up, and he kind of ignored all the Image stuff because he didn't have anything to do with it. I think Eastman might have been involved somehow with the Image stuff more so, but I think it was intended as an extension of the Mirage stuff, and then Laird kind of just disregarded it when he started doing his stuff back up.
Okay. Yeah, I just pulled up the final issue of the Mirage series, and it looks like it's dated for August of 1993. There's a 3-year gap, but first off, I'm heavy into Image Comics in 96, and to hear that the Turtles were going to be published by Image. Not only that, but our first taste of the Turtles in Image Comics was in Savage Dragon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And man, oh man, I remember sitting there on the bus and I had those issues in my Trapper Keeper, and I was like, holy crap, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are back, baby. And I was so excited because it was Image Comics, and they could do some violence. Savage Dragon was not known for being a very kid-friendly book. This was a very violent book, and sometimes it pushed the bounds of nudity. And I was like, if this is what the Turtles are going to be associated with, which they are, because if you look at this, at least in this issue that we're getting ready to talk about, which is issue number 4, Eric Larson's handling the letters in the back. I assume the Turtles are being, is this highbrow?
They highbrow the studio that I don't know if it was still called highbrow by this time, but yeah, Eric Larson's sort of corner of the Image production was handling all the Turtle stuff.
Yeah. That's exciting. That was exciting to me. Okay, before we get into this,
technically the Turtles have always been naked.
There's 3 issues that precede this. However, we need to talk about the poll results. I've already given away the winner, but I'm going to tell you right now, folks. We threw up a poll, and I number one, I don't know why you picked these issues. Like, these feel like random issues to me, Chris. But
I have a reason.
Yes, you had to have had a reason. So tell me what it is.
I wanted to do Turtles, and this is the 90s comics podcast. I tried to find something in these series that represented 90s comics. The first one I picked was the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Adventures number 24, which had Slash and Raphael on the cover. Not the first appearance of Slash, but the first time the Turtles meet Slash in that series. The Turtles facing off with the Spider-Man had Venom, Ghost Rider had Vengeance, and the Turtles had Slash. He's sort of the dark mirror of the heroes. That's why I went with that one for the Adventures series. And with the Image Comics series, I went with one of the Ninja Turtles as a cyborg, because cyborgs were lousy. In the 90s, you had Cyberforce, Deathlock, probably some other characters.
He does look pretty grim and also gritty.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. That was kind of my reason for picking these two. It was the Turtles really leaning into the 90s tropes of comics, sort of.
Okay. All right. Well, results. We let this one hang out there for quite a while. I think I pushed the Twitter one to 7 days. I think that was the max. And we had 4 votes out there, but it was split 2 and 2. I think I voted. Probably one of you guys voted. There was 2. It was 2 and 2 out there. Interestingly enough, when we got ready to do this show, Evan's like, hey, who's winning? And I was like, oh, well, let's take a look. We had a tie over in Facebook land, and of course we had the tie over in Twitter. And I was like, oh wow, we got to break this tie. And Chris, you reached out to Cody.
Yeah, my friend Cody, who doesn't always, but usually votes in these. I noticed he had not voted. I just sent him a message and said, break this tie for me.
He did.
And he voted for the Image book.
He did. We are going to be talking about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles number 4. However, you said you did read the Adventures number 24.
I did. I would just out of curiosity, and I'll sum it up. It's I thought I had never read this. I thought maybe I had dropped off of the Turtles Adventures by this time, because by this point I was getting into Marvel and DC, and Image I think had launched by then, and the Ninja Turtles Adventure from Archie was not quite scratching the itch as much, but I knew I followed it up through the Mutanimals or Mutanimals, which is how I pronounced it until recently. I think Evan is the first person I ever heard pronounce it correctly. So this was shortly after that. I was still hanging around because I remembered this once I read it, but Krang has recruited Slash and an alien named Belly Bomb to get revenge on the Turtles, and they're on this prison planet. And then they steal like the prison guard's spaceship, and along the way they pick up Bebop and Rocksteady. And by the time they return to Earth, the Turtles are fighting it out with Shredder, and the issue just ends with Krang kind of taking over Shredder's body. Like, the last image we see is Shredder with the Krang brain instead of his own head.
Ooh.
Very end. And Slash did fight it out with some of the Turtles for a little bit. A weird thing about that issue was they had 2 different artists. Garrett Ho, who I remember his art is much more cartoony, and it looked more like, I think maybe he even did some of the Mutanimals issues, or at least the issues leading up to that miniseries. And then the second half of the book was Jim Lawson, who might have been one of the Mirage guys. It was a really it looked more like an indie comics style. I didn't like it this much.
Oh, really?
But I think both of those guys did a lot of the different issues of that Turtle series. I think Jim Lawson may have done the original adaptation of the shows that were the first handful of issues, but that's my memory anyway. I didn't check that, but that's pretty much what happened in that issue. It was interesting enough, but
okay. Well, yeah, and I think when did that come out again? Do you remember when that issue had dropped?
I do not remember. I would guess 92 in that range.
Okay. Yeah. As soon as I'm starting to get into Image, I'm sorry, Archie comics. Yeah. I'm not. That's not a slam on them. It's just that wasn't what I was into at that time.
Sure.
But my understanding is that some of those stories are a lot of fun from what I've heard.
I'm assuming you read these on Hoopla, or this issue on Hoopla, Evan?
Yes.
Was it part of the Urban Legends section? It was in color. This initial series was in black and white when Image put it out, which I thought was interesting to me because by this time I had known the original issues were in black and white and they all wore red bandanas. It was darker and stuff. I knew this was kind of similar to that. And this series ended up getting canceled before it was concluded. Do you guys know about how IDW brought this series back later?
No. I don't think so.
I don't remember what issue it went to, but it was canceled before with some dangling plot threads. And when IDW has been publishing all the new Turtle stuff for 12 years or so now. And a couple of years ago, I think maybe in 2018, they started reprinting this series in color, and they gave the original creators, Gary Carlson and Frank Fosco, the writer and artist, 3 new issues to wrap up all their stuff.
Oh, wow.
They reprinted up through issue, 24 or whatever it was, and then they gave them 3 more issues of new material to wrap everything up and conclude the series properly and stuff. That's what the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Urban Legend book is. It's mostly reprints of this Image series, but then they have some original stuff at the end there.
Yeah, definitely. Do you recognize Carlson's name for anything else?
I believe Carlson worked on Megaton stuff with Eric Larson. I believe he co-created Vanguard, the character that showed up in a lot of Eric Larson stuff in the early 90s. He had his own book for a while. He was in Dragon a lot. And I believe the first appearance of Dragon is him fighting Vanguard on a cover of Megaton number 3 or 4 from the early 80s.
Oh, wow.
But that's who Carlson was. And I think Fosco may have been from that era, too, that had worked on some of those indie books before Eric Larson got into Marvel and DC stuff.
Just looking them up on Mike's Amazing World of Comics, we're talking about Carlson here. Vanguard 1 through 6. I'm sure that Fosco's resume is a little bit longer than what Mike's Amazing World of Comics has him at. It looks like he's legitimately he's got less than 20 issues credited here. The thing is, it doesn't have any of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles issues there, which boggles my mind. Yeah, none of them are listed, but he's got his hands in some DC Comics, Showcase 94, Steel 9 and 10, Robin 29 and 30, and he's doing some Savage Dragon in the 100s, it looks like. Anyway, there's your creative team. We also have, I think it was Chris Eliopoulos on the letters. Yeah, Chris Eliopoulos on the letters, and anchor Andrew Papoy. I'm going to go ahead and get into the synopsis here real quick on this thing, if you guys are ready. Is there anything I left out yet?
We haven't picked our favorite turtle yet.
Yes. I'm glad you said that. Okay. I go first. And my favorite turtle is Raphael. Always going to be Raphael.
The leader of the group, transformed from the norm by the nuclear goop.
And incorrect. But
he's not the leader, but that is the lyric.
That is the lyric. That's freaking.
Is that from Ninja Go Ninja Go Ninja Go?
No. That's Turtle Power by Partners in Crime. That's KRYME.
Yes. They were obviously mistaken. They wrote those lyrics, and it bothers me to this day. However,
it's still a great song.
It is still a great song. All right, Chris, who's your favorite?
I got to go with the party dude. I've always been a Michelangelo guy, and has not changed over the years.
Wow.
All right, Evan, do you have a favorite turtle that's not a human?
I mean, I hope we don't have to do like we do with panels, and I have to pick a different one because you took mine. But yeah, Michelangelo is my guy.
Nice.
All right.
See, it seemed like when I was a kid, most of my friends and most younger kids liked Michelangelo the most. And then as I got older,
I am immature.
I started hearing more people cite Raph. Nobody ever says Leonardo, and nobody said Donatello back then either. But now I've got a friend that's got a couple of a nephew and a niece that like the Ninja Turtles, and their favorite is Donatello. And he was telling me that's kind of like a lot of kids' favorite now because he's the smart one and he uses computers and stuff like that. Which when I was a kid, nobody liked Donatello or Leonardo. It was always Raphael or Michelangelo.
Right.
I thought I knew some people that liked Leonardo. Here's my controversial opinion. Get Jesse nice and riled up. I didn't understand why anybody liked Raphael.
Wow.
Okay, Leonardo was the leader. Donatello was the science guy. Michelangelo was funny, and Raphael was a little surly.
Yes, Mike. that is exactly
that was my opinion.
He's the hothead.
I'm not going to have a defense other than agreeing with you. Yes, he was surly. He was mad. He could be a smart ass, but he would also he was a hard ass. That's the other thing.
But keep in mind that my main experience with them was from the show. I don't remember him being like that on the show. Like I could, when I read some of the other comics and some other interpretations, I'm like, okay, I still like Michelangelo, but Raphael has more of a personality. I don't remember him having like a distinctive personality in the show. I just remember, like I said, Michelangelo was funny, Donatello was smart, Leonardo was the leader and the straight arrow, and Raphael was just like a turtle.
Okay. All right. Well,
Raphael, he's cool but rude. He couldn't be too much of a bad boy on the cartoon.
Yeah.
I'm going to blow your mind.
The other personalities were easier to define for kids, I guess.
We didn't talk about this yet. Who's your favorite turtle in the arcade game?
Oh.
Yeah. Now I'm going to say Donatello.
I think strategically that's probably the correct answer, but I was always a diehard Michelangelo. So no matter what, I would always want to use him.
Okay.
Same here.
All right. Okay. Good enough. All right. We get into Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #4, but we have these first 3 issues. Can you kind of catch us up real quick there, Chris, on what happened in the first 3 issues prior to this?
Yeah. The first issue opens with them having a birthday party that gets crashed by these cyborgs that attack the turtles in the sewer and this ninja lady, Pamiko. I don't know how to pronounce that exactly, but
that's what I was going for me.
They drug Splinter and kidnap him, and they take Donnie away. Donnie, blown away by the cyborgs in the very first page. And they take him and Splinter on this helicopter, and Donnie wakes up in the helicopter and tries to fight back, and they end up knocking him out, and he falls from a great height and lands back first on the pavement, which kind of crushes his shell, and he's almost dead. Meanwhile, back at the sewer, they've cut off one of these cyborgs' heads, and the body fries Raphael's face, which is why he's got bandages on his face in this issue, and a pretty gnarly image of. I'll actually send you guys a picture of it. It actually looks worse.
When I was kind of cycling through, I saw some of that.
Yeah, it looks worse in color than it does here in the black and white issue, but yeah, it's pretty gnarly. Yeah, that's kind of what happened in the first issue, and in the second issue, we see Splinter is in this Lord Komodo's facility. That's who had kidnapped him, because he's trying to analyze these different mutants and stuff. And that's kind of basically it. They get kidnapped by Lord Komodo and his minions, and then the other 3 turtles are trying to find their way to track them down. And they find, eventually at the end of the third issue, they find Donnie's shell with what they think is his skeleton left inside of it. But we find out that's not really his skeleton at the beginning of this issue.
Right. Yeah, we open this issue with the shocking revelation that Donatello may have been killed. Nope. He certainly was not. He was. They reduce or deduce from the skeleton that it's a human skeleton. So they're like, wait a second, why is there a human skeleton inside this beat up shell? At that point, though, they are assuming that Donatello's dead, and they want to get some payback. They've got to go. The other turtles, Leonardo, Raphael, and Michelangelo, they're devastated. They head out and bury Donatello's, what they believe is his remains.
Well, okay, 1 second. Yeah. That's not the issue I read.
Uh-oh.
All right. What issue did you read?
I think I read the next issue. What's the cover of this issue look like?
It's got Cyborg Donatello on the cover.
Well, okay, I thought that's what I read, but that is not what I read. This collection. Okay, it was the 5th issue in the collection, and I know it was number 4, but
Well,
what's the first issue in the collection?
No, I think what happened is they put I went by the cover we had on the poll, which is Donatello as a cyborg and the other 3 turtles facing him.
Yeah.
But that is at the end of the issue you're describing.
Oh, so maybe they changed the covers up when they reprinted the series or something.
Might have. Yeah, because, yeah.
All right.
Okay,
well, then
happened.
You read issue 5, so you get to kind of let us know what happened in issue 5.
Me and Jesse can talk about this one, and you can tell us how.
I'm sorry.
Oh, it's fine, dude.
Because I went and I'm like, wait a minute, that's the cover, but that's the cover I thought we had, but it looks like issue 4. And then I went back and I checked the cover. Yeah, I had the next one.
Okay, that's fine, man. I think no big deal. We'll
you guys talk. I'm going to read.
I got a synopsis right here for you. You don't have to read nothing. I will read you this, or I'll tell you exactly what happens in this 4th issue.
Need to find
how am I going to share my wise and thoughtful observations without reading
banter? I want to ask something real quick, Chris, because I assume that Raphael just decided to grab Casey's mask because
I guess that happened in the 3rd issue.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, he's got like this hideous scarring on his face.
Yeah, that picture is gnarly.
Yeah, he's all bandaged up, and either Leo or Mikey tells him, like, hey, use this mask to protect your face because it's all scarred up at the.
Yeah, I wondered why in the world.
That's one of my favorite things is Raphael having Casey's mask.
Well, okay. So the other turtles, Leonardo, Raphael, and Michelangelo, are devastated. They bury what they believe are Donatello's remains. Enraged, Raphael vows to get justice from those responsible, especially the villain's Dragon Lord, which I think is the guy you were talking about, something Komodo. Mm-hmm. What was his name? The Komodo, Lord Komodo.
Lord Komodo, maybe? I think.
Yeah, I guess how you're referring to him. And then Pamiko as well. They are on a mission. The remaining turtles take off in their air car that Donatello, I think, finished after one of the Triceratons, I think, brought it over or something like that.
That would be Zog.
Zog. Okay. All right. They hop in the air car, head over to the Dragon Lord's headquarters, hoping also to rescue their master Splinter, who's over there. And at the lair, Splinter doesn't seem to be too much in danger from Lord Komodo or Dragon Lord. He's more trying to protect him from an oncoming Mako. That's right. Half shark, half man villain Mako, which if you know, yeah, buddy, if you know Savage Dragon, you know Mako.
Oh, he showed up in an issue of the Max too.
Yeah, yes, he did. I remember the cover, exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, Splinter's trying to protect the Dragon Lord from Mako, who is gone nuts, and he's planning on eating Splinter. He's planning on, he's trying to kill anything that's in sight. Splinter bops him a couple times on his most sensitive part of his body, which is Mako's nose. Then at some point, the Dragon Lord starts to like transforms into this large Komodo dragon, thereby. And I don't know why this scared him so much, but Mako freaks out and he's like, I'm out of here. This is the craziest thing I've ever seen. He's a freaking shark man, and he decides to leave. He's a disgust. He runs out of the lair. Komodo dragons, by the way, are trying to attack him, and they're also chasing him at the same time. Splinter stays behind and tries to tend to Dragon Lord because it seems like there's some type of honor that he has.
Yeah,
so I assume
mutual respect.
Yeah. He's trying to help the reverted Dragon Lord, but the Dragon Lord's bodyguards show up and they inject him with some type of serum or something in order to turn him back into a human form. But they also look at Splinter and they're like, you saw his true form. You must die. They threaten to kill Splinter at the time. Meanwhile, the turtles are trying to make their way towards the lair. And they run into Mako, who is coming back at them with all the Komodo dragons behind him. And he, in turn, hijacks their air car and takes off with it to try and escape while the turtles are just sitting there watching him do that. But then Raph grabs a remote control and he makes a comment about how Donnie thought of this. And he takes the remote control and flicks the switch, and the air car turns upside down. Therefore, Mako falls completely out of it, back onto the ground. Now, in this cornfield where Mako is, he's landed, and he's still trying to fight off these Komodo dragons. It's a good ways away from the turtles. All of a sudden, this massive hulking thing comes out, and it's like targeting these Komodo dragons, and it's trying to figure out what all the commotion is. Now, the way that the story is told, it's told as if Donatello is watching this cyborg kill or attack Mako and these Komodo dragons.
Yeah, it's kind of in a first-person view.
Exactly. But then as things move forward, Donatello starts to realize that he is the cyborg that's doing this. It's a half machine, half Donatello cyborg, and he is somehow still alive in this horrific state, and that's where we end the comic. Donatello is not dead, however, he has been transformed into this like killer cyborg, and may not be in full control of his faculties. Something like that. Faculties? His facilities would be the bathroom.
That may be an issue for him as well.
But there you go. That's issue 4 in a nutshell. I will just kind of throw out my first note here. And my first note was like, I did not remember that these were black and white. I had forgot all about that. I think I picked up like the first TMNT issue, but as big as a fan as I was, I did not continue to collect the Image Turtles. And man, did I want to. The red bandanas were back, baby. This was Image Comics. These were the Turtles, man. What are you doing? Why aren't you picking these up? And I think a lot of it probably had something to do with the money and that I was spending on other stuff, and it was just like I couldn't add another thing to the pull list. The other thing that I had mentioned here was Mako. Seeing Mako show up in this comic was like, oh yeah, this is an Image comic. This is Eric Larson. This is just watching him be his dumb self. I don't really know much of Mako's personality. It's probably the most personality I've ever seen Mako have. I could be wrong. He probably had.
I think he's got more dialogue in this issue than he does in any issue of Dragon that he shows up in.
He's always just biting everybody.
Yeah.
It's good to see Mako. What'd you think of the issue, Chris?
Yeah, I like this series quite a bit. I was there super excited like you. I picked up the first issue of the Image Turtles, and the thing that kept me from keeping up with it, I think I had the first like 5 issues maybe, and it was just a book that apparently was not selling well. My local shop, either they were not getting enough copies in, or they just stopped ordering it because I just couldn't get the issues. And later in like my mid to late 20s, when I was like, I'm going to go back and collect that Turtles series, a lot of those packages were just too expensive. That was another reason I was so happy when IDW decided to republish all that stuff, so I could finally actually read a lot of that stuff. But this issue specifically, yeah, I was super excited about Donatello as a cyborg because I was all about the edgy 90s stuff and taking this beloved character and kind of putting him through the ringer physically and emotionally and psychologically or everything. That was a really interesting twist to this series. And also Raphael dealing with being basically disfigured from that first issue. They really violenced it up. And
oh yeah,
like I said in that first issue, these turtles are not afraid. They're not worried about killing people. They're cutting off these cyborgs' heads. They're as violent as I imagine they were in those Mirage issues, although I haven't read many of those. And I was also excited to see Mako. I don't know if it's true that a shark's nose is really the most sensitive part of his body, but I have always remembered that because Splinter said it in this comic book.
No, I've read that in like I like to read books about sharks and stuff when I was a kid, and like if you get attacked by a shark, you're supposed to hit it in the nose. I don't know if that works or if it's just supposed to give you something to think about before you get eaten, but that's what I've always heard.
Is that what LL Cool J did in Deep Blue Sea? I remember he fought off that shark. I think he stabbed it in the eye.
He also rapped and pretty fiercely.
That is like sharp sin.
Yeah.
I like Fosco's art. It's pretty simple, but I think he does the turtle, like especially the way he draws the turtles. They're really like compact and chunky. I kind of like that. I was also disappointed at the black and white thing back then. I do like the black and white now. It sometimes can be a little hard to decipher stuff because of that. The colorized issues that IDW put out, maybe those are better. I'd have to look at them side by side to really compare them, I guess. But I do like Fosco's art, and I really like that big. It's not my panel, but I like that where you mentioned Mako with the Komodo dragons chasing him, and he kind of just runs through the turtles in that cornfield. That's really cool. Big double splash. Yeah, and the design on Cyborg Donatello is very cool.
Oh yeah.
He looks cooler on the cover, maybe because you got the colorized stuff with the electricity, and Eric Larson inked that cover. But yeah, very cool design on Cyborg Donnie. I like him.
Yeah, man. That's
pretty much all I got. I think
there's a real touching panel where they bury Donatello and they bury his shell. Yeah, and they're kind of all sitting around there, and they're trying to get Mikey to join them, and Mikey's like, in a minute, and then like the next panel is him just bawling.
Yeah,
it's sad. It's kind of sad.
Yeah, I was going to mention that that was one of my runners-up on my panel. It's not the one I was going to pick, but yeah, that they put his staff there, like they break it in half and put it as an X by his little grave thing, memorial, whatever, and then yeah, Michelangelo kind of loses it. That's really good stuff.
All right, Evan, you seeing anything there?
Oh yeah, I read this issue. No, it's interesting. I did read the color one, and but even cycling through this and trying to find and failing to find the right issue, a lot of this stuff jumped out at me. Now I am not someone who thinks the Turtles need violence up. I'm happy with them being an all ages romp, but like even flipping through this and reading this issue and the next issue, the kind of the extremes they take it to is really jarring, because even though this art is different from the cartoony stuff, it's familiar enough that it's really jarring to see the Turtles like this, and I don't know, there's more to it than just shock value. Like you said, there's that real emotion with Donatello, with them thinking he's dead, and or flipping back to the one where Raphael is scarred and he's like, oh man, this really hurts and I'm having trouble seeing. It's just I don't know, it kind of, even though these are rougher, tougher turtles who may not hesitate to kill or whatever, it's just, it kind of does a cool job of making it darker but still retaining some of the, I don't know if innocence is the right word, but these are teenagers and this is really jarring violence, not just for violence sake, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Right.
I thought that was pretty effective in both the issues I read. And it is cool. Image, I'm probably haven't read as much Image stuff as you guys have, but as much as I always love the shared universe idea, I've always been kind of curious about Image, because it's like, well, we have a shared continuity when we need it, and if we don't, we're just gonna do this thing. But yeah, I remember, like I said, the Max was probably the first Image comic I read, and I remember Mako and Savage Dragon showing up in there. So even though it was these guys kind of doing their own thing, it was cool when they acknowledged, yeah, hey, we've got a shared universe.
Yeah,
it's kind of like the best of both worlds.
Yeah, and to have the Turtles be a part of that shared universe, that really wasn't something that was done. It seemed like, well, I shouldn't say that. I just saw some Cerebus was showing up in the Mirage title at one point, but this is a universe that was created 4 years prior to these issues, and Image's model at that time was to be something similar to Marvel and DC, where everybody connected with everybody. So the Turtles, it didn't seem like to me like the Turtles had that opportunity before this. Like it wasn't like they weren't in Marvel hanging out with Spider-Man. They weren't in DC hanging out with Teen Titans or anything like that. Now they're in they're in the Image universe, and there is going to be this hopefully. Well, I'm hoping. I don't remember, since I didn't read any of the series, I don't know if they took advantage of that or not, or if it's just like you said, Evan, it's going to be like, hey, we're going to do our own thing here, and every once in a while somebody might show up. But seeing Mako in issue 4 gives you some hope for that.
The other thing that's neat is that the last present day Turtles thing I read, well, present day as in it was recently published, was the Ninja Turtles Stranger Things crossover.
Ooh.
And it works. And that's the cool thing, is like, even though the Turtles have all this mythology and everything, they also like cross over really easily with other things, because even though they can go all over the place, it's based in New York and thereabouts. There's a ninja clan and all this stuff. They really fit seamlessly in when they want to do stories like this. You don't necessarily need a portal or anything. You can just be like, oh yeah, and then we went to New York and there were some turtles in the sewer.
Right. Shortly after the pandemic hit, Ronnie and I did TMNT Ghostbusters, which was just a great concept, and done. I think it was this. Well, I don't know if it was the second, but you could tell this was IDW. I think at that point there was continuity with both that was being used in the crossover, which was pretty cool. But yeah, when you start to look at how those two teams kind of parallel each other in some ways, you got Michelangelo hanging out with Venkman. You got Donatello and Egon hanging out. Maybe Venkman and Raphael was the one hanging out, and it was Michelangelo and Ray. I can't remember, but you could see the parallels.
We know Egon and Donatello were hanging out. That's got to happen.
Well, let's pick some panels here. Chris, you picked the issues. I'll let you go first, man.
All right, I'm going to go. This is going to be, page 5, panel 3, which is Leo and Raph are arguing in the car, and Michelangelo is getting had enough, and he tells them to shut up and cracks their heads together like watermelons.
Some Three Stooges stuff right there. That's good. All right.
Too soon, Jesse. There were 4 turtles. Now there's only 3.
Oh,
you go Three Stooges. How dare you?
How dare I? Gosh. Now I got to find my panel because I know what's said, but I can't remember where it's at. So it's a Mako thing. Mako is completely oblivious that he is a man shark, I think. Like, he eats things like a shark, but he's calling people freaks. Like, he calls the turtles freaks. Right. And he gets scared that there is a guy that transformed into a Komodo dragon.
Yeah, he's a man shark. This guy is a man, and then he's a dragon. That's weird.
My panel is Donatello has him in his sights, and Mako, who's continually battling these Komodo dragons in this cornfield. What are you looking at, butthead? And there you go. Yeah, clearly I'm picking that panel just because of the Back to the Future ties. Evan Bevins, what do you got, man?
Well, I'm picking the page where they're wrapping up Donnie's funeral.
Okay.
Just, you get the emotion of that, and you got Raph with the Casey Jones mask. Does that make him my favorite turtle in this?
Yeah, it could be.
And you see the scar, and you see the sadness, and it's just here are the turtles, but this is not a panel I would have expected to see, even if I'd been reading it when it was coming out, even though I would have been in high school. But just not what you would expect from a Ninja Turtles story, and works really well.
Now, Evan, you got to fill us in on what happens in issue 5.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Oh, man. Okay, well...
You don't have to go into great detail, but...
yeah, well, just the turtles are assaulting the Komodo's headquarters, yeah, and one of them says, what, do you think Splinter's just going to be having tea with Warlord Komodo? And then they whip out some binoculars, and Splinter's having tea with Warlord Komodo. But what was cool is the Warlord Komodo was drugging him, but the cool thing is apparently Warlord Komodo is supposed to be able to transform into some sort of dragon, but he's not supposed to just be a regular dragon. And like, he loses a lot of his intelligence or whatever. He's studying creatures like Splinter and Mako to find a way to transform and still maintain his intelligence, which I thought was kind of a cool story and kind of an interesting twist on a lot of the standard mutant turtle stories. And then we do find out that Pimiko or whatever is Shredder's daughter.
Okay. Much like, wasn't Karai Shredder's daughter in like the films, or am I getting that confused?
I think that was his granddaughter, maybe.
Granddaughter. Oh, okay.
Anyway, yeah, she's his granddaughter. But yeah, then there's some more fighting, and then Donatello comes in and just shoots multiple holes through one of the lizard guys who was mutated and was more intelligent. And then they escape through this tunnel, and Splinter disappears, and then they find a giant bat that they think might have been Splinter.
Splinter, they think Splinter might have mutated?
They injected him with some mutagen in part of the experiments. And
wow.
Yeah, there's this giant bat, and so they go chasing after it, and that's where it ends.
Okay. Did you say Donnie joined them, or did
Yeah, they did find Donnie, and they had a touching reunion, and then they're in their air car, and they kind of lose track of Splinter, and then Donatello says, "I've just got one question. What's that? Isn't anybody going to ask what the heck happened to me?" And it says the end for now.
Okay. All right. Bunch of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle shenanigans.
One thing I forgot to bring it up when I was doing the recap of the other issues. In issue 2, one of the people that the bad guys are kind of experimenting on is a clearly a riff on Wolverine called the Weasel. And he's got he's got 4 claws instead of 3. And he instead of using the term bub, his line is when he's called an animal, he says, "I'm not the animal here, Bubba." And he attacks Komodo and is summarily beheaded by Pamiko and dies.
Ooh.
There's also a couple of Marvel references in issue 5 when they're getting ready to attack. Raph declares that it's clobbering time. And,
nice.
And when they're down in the tunnel looking for Splinter, Don turns on one of his cyborg lights and says, "Flame on."
Nice.
Oh, that's funny. Well, all right, we've come to the end here. We have discussed Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles issues 1 through 5 today. 1 through 5, first 5 issues.
And Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle Adventures number 24.
That's right. That's right.
And a whole bunch of other Ninja Turtle stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the movie. Talk about the musical tour.
Guys, for the longest time, probably, I don't know. What's that?
I said that tour is not canon.
I have listened to that soundtrack a lot lately. When I say lately, I'd say probably about 2 years ago. Actually, when we and Ronnie were getting ready to do the Ghostbusters TMNT stuff, I was like, I wonder if Spotify has Coming Out of Their Shells on there. And they do. And I've listened to that album a lot. And of course, that has the iconic Pizza Power song that the arcade game has. But there's a lot of other good stuff on there too, like
Skipping Stones.
And that came out in 1990. Okay, we already talked about Turtle Power. You got the Walk Straight, which is the anti-drug song. Walk Straight. Then you have Skipping Stones, just like you said. Sing About It's good. Pizza Power's great. Cowabunga. I think that's the other one. Track number 7. Cowabunga is a good one. So if you get a chance.
I Hate Music. Is that on there?
I Hate Music is not on here.
Oh.
What is that? Are you like making a joke?
Shredder's song.
Is that Shredder's song?
Maybe he just says that and his song has different lyrics. I can't remember.
Okay.
It's been a while. For several years in a row, me and one of my friends would get together and watch the Coming Out of Our Shells tour on YouTube.
I have not watched the tour. I have never watched the tour. I've listened to the soundtrack left and right, but I've never sat down and watched the tour. That's got to be some good throwback stuff. Something else. Well, this has been something else. Let's get into plugs. Chris, we'll start with you, buddy. What do you got going on over there on your side of things, small screeners and all that?
Yeah, I've got another podcast called Small Screeners where me and my buddy AJ look at direct-to-video and made-for-TV movies. I think I'm not sure when this is going to actually drop, but we've got an upcoming episode that's coming out in a couple weeks on the John Carpenter Elvis film from the late 70s, I believe. Made for TV. Kurt Russell starring as Elvis, one of Carpenter's first movies. A lot of fun to talk about that. And you can also find me on Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky at BrodyMan34, and I've got a Letterboxd under Disco Shrew. Also plug for Batman Ninja Turtles, the animated movie, which is really good.
Oh, okay.
Very entertaining.
I haven't watched that yet. I've heard it's really good, though. All right. Well, Evan Bevins, you got some stuff going on over there at Asterisk 51.
Yeah, asterisk51.blogspot.com. Just started my amalgam read-through with Super Soldier, Captain America Superman mashup by Mark Waid and Dave Gibbons. So can't get much better than that to jump into things. And then we've got some new episodes of Snap material out, including our first video battle over on YouTube.
Yeah.
Which Jesse definitely likes to have video evidence of that as opposed to
I'm glad I don't have video evidence of the previous battle. Jeez.
But yeah, check that out. And then over on my blog, I also do some Free Comic Fridays, going back and looking through my stacks and stacks of things I've gotten for Free Comic Book Day. And occasionally seeing what kind of movies, big theatrical releases or direct-to-video secrets people hope never see the light of day that you can find at Dollar Tree.
Very good. Well, hey, ladies and gentlemen, you're most likely listening to this episode on the Source Material Comics podcast feed. We have this show right here, Unspoken Issues, where we talk about 90s comics. Airs just about every other week. Unless I get some extra content. Sometimes you might hear it twice in a row. You never know. But hey, it's me, it's Evan, it's me Me and Chris, it's a combination of us all. Dean and Derry talking about 90s comics. If you get a chance, check that out. There's plenty of those in the archives. We're at over 100 episodes. Also, you can check out the Source Material Comics podcast, where it's any era. And right here recently, it's been myself and Mark Radulich talking some Batman-related comics, where we talked about GCPD, we talked about Gordon of Gotham and Gordon's Law, which was very good. And upcoming soon, you should be able to hear us discussing The Mask. Mask Returns and The Mask Strikes Back. And this is not your Stanley Ipkiss, ladies and gentlemen. Not the one that you thought you saw Jim Carrey at the helm in the theaters. No, sir. There is a lot of bloodletting, a lot of violence, and man, there were some pretty shocking moments, especially in the first issue. By the time we hit the first series, by the time we hit the third series, the movie has come out, and they were like, whoa, wait a second. This character needs to be toned down a little bit. They kind of depart and kind of go along with the movie iteration, I guess you would say, of kind of what you get with The Mask. Not as violent, but still, you can hear me and Mark talk about that. With that being said, we're getting out of here. That's Evan Bevins. Over there's Chris Armstrong. I'm Jesse Starcher. Thanks for joining us tonight. Turtle Power.
Thanks for joining us. Unspoken Issues is part of the UnspokenDecade.com, the home for 90s comics, blogs, and podcasts. Unspoken Issues also has a Facebook group you can join if you are interested. Just search the Unspoken Issues podcast and request to join. All of this would not be possible without W2Mnet.com, so make sure to seek them out for more podcasts. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please feel free to share, and we look forward to entertaining you again soon.